With the proper books read and the traps crafted, Jules rises early to have his first go at snagging a bird from the nearby forests. Though scrounging for wriggling bait as he walks and wrenching it free from the earth with a trowel, Jules prays that he can keep a steady enough supply to keep him fed. Leaving his traps be to see if his technique worked, Jules passes the time by collecting more firewood to get him through the winter. Hopeful that all his preparation would land him a hefty bird, Jules gulps down what he hopes to be his last canned meal for a while, before preparing himself an indulgent mocha in the warm embrace of his isolated home. Finally returning to check his traps, Jules can't contain the roaring fire in his heart as he spots and retrieves the two birds he had managed to snag. Somewhat sloppily managing to butcher them, he wastes no time in retrieving his roasting pan to prepare a meal he felt like he had worked a lifetime towards. Surrounded by the swirling wafts of wild garlic and cooked game, Jules fills his stomach to bursting as he stares out towards the thick woods that would provide him safe and priceless calories. Circling back to bait his traps one last time as the sun sinks towards the horizon, he prays that the morning would greet him with more birds and more hope. Finding himself fixating on his newest lifeline, Jules spends the entire day acquiring bait and feeding the traps so that the source of garlic-roasted delights could continue to fuel him forward. Having his beliefs reaffirmed by the successes of his newest venture, Jules plunges himself into a more advanced book on carpentry, confident that more complicated structures would provide even more security and comfort. Rising on another chilly November morning, Jules falls into the routine of moving his feet towards his lucrative traps, but knows that his brief retreat from hell was over. Mind full of various concepts and theories centered around structures and furniture, Jules knew that his literature had reached its limits, and now was the time to blunder through the process of learning by hand. Rolling down the quiet and brisk hill of Little Hope, Jules decides that the safest place to test his new skills would be the trailer park he had turned into a ghost town not too long ago. Pulling into the park of overgrown buildings and shattered doors, Jules almost feels like an intruder in this now forgotten community, as he plans to strip it of not only its dead, but the very comforts that it still held within its flimsy walls. Uncertain which home had belonged to Marcus, Jules suppresses the idea that he may have desecrated the home of the man who saved him, and instead cloaks his mind in the obsession of honing and perfecting his new skill. Hammering and sawing late into the night, Jules spots the small flakes of snow drifting lazily towards the ground outside, and decides it's time to rest and recover his aching muscles in the precarious sanctuary he had previously established. Waking up to the sight of snow still falling, Jules shudders in the persistent cold before he stirs his body forward and rejects the emotions still attempting to penetrate his sheltered mind. Finally confident he had branded his new knowledge into his brain with hard labor and persistence, Jules loads up a few nicer pieces of furniture and steers his heart and soul back towards Little Hope. Eyeing the accumulating snow both on the ground and the gnarled limbs of the lifeless trees, Jules once again wraps himself in the safety of his sanctuary before distracting his mind once more with everything that needed doing. Quiet. It's an odd word to use in a situation I find myself in. The last time I can remember my mind being so still was in the late evenings after school, where I was left alone in my library. My life, which I suppose is what I can call this now, has been so relentlessly demanding that I had almost forgotten what it was like to relax. Though I imagine most people wouldn't describe crunching through the snow and hammering together crates as easygoing, this much-needed relief is the easiest my life has been since the country club. I'm going to go curl up by the fire with a good book. Jules. Having lost himself in the stubborn tendrils of the written word the previous night, Jules awakes with the reminder that his precious collection had only been half secured. Though freeing his children from the clutches of the undead meant to return to Riverside, Jules felt a foreign pulse of confidence following all the successes he had so recently achieved. If he could make it this far despite the world lashing out at him at every turn, then nothing would be able to stop him from rescuing what he cherished most. Slipping on the bloodied and soaked bulletproof vest he had claimed from the undead, Jules savors a final bite of his accomplishments before fortifying his resolve for the expedition back into town. Pulling back into the scene where he had spilled so much blood before, Jules' eyes glaze over with a layer of apathy before he dispatches the shambling corpse of a student with no more than a muffled grunt. Shuffling his deft feet across the stained linoleum floor, Jules makes it back to the room he had held so dear in his heart before he begins the careful and slow process of packing up his many friends. Grabbing 2 shelves to help begin his library up at the station, Jules decides to scout out the nearby grocery store to see if slipping inside was at all possible. As if the undead could sense his intent, he watches in agitation and rage as the deceptively clever creatures stumble towards the Gigamart in waves that Jules couldn't stomach to face at the moment. Resigning instead to loot some of the nearby homes, Jules mutters bitterly against the thick mask covering his face, half convinced that some sadistic god was observing him from above and toying with him gleefully. Coming across a shotgun in one of the larger homes, Jules is reminded of the tactic he had cast aside at the start of the outbreak, but now wonders if his situation called for a more disruptive solution. Recalling the many debates he had engaged in with Kevin about using firearms against the swarms of undead, Jules finds himself now defeating his previous arguments with the violent wisdom he had gained during his fight for survival. Still conflicted on the issue as he pulls back into Little Hope, he uses the excuse of limited ammo to put the matter to rest, so that his mind and body can settle back into the routine he was quickly establishing in his welcome isolation. Waking up eagerly to the chirp of his alarm, Jules is filled with an excitement he hadn't felt in quite some time, as the day had finally arrived to begin organizing his new library. Setting up rain collectors beneath the overhang of his station and adding the finishing touches to his reading corner, Jules pries himself away from his rescued collection to once again dig in the dirt and tend to the traps that kept him alive and moving forward. Happily flipping through the beloved pages of his books as he lets another roast cook in the wood stove, Jules momentarily dreams of locking himself inside of Little Hope forever, but knows in the depths of his heart that the nightmare outside his walls would never let him rest for long. Trudging out into the cold darkness one final time to retrieve the plunder of calories and food, Jules slinks back into the accommodating kitchen where he rests his head and ponders on what tomorrow might bring.